Welcome to another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Today,
Sounds good.
we're going to be looking into the case of Charles Arnett Stevens,
Okay.
the I-580 killer, right?
Right.
Terrorized California's Interstate 580 back in 1989.
Wow.
We've got Stevens' Wikipedia article pulled up, so we're about to unpack a life that seemed ordinary.
Okay.
Until it wasn't.
Oh, interesting.
Get this. He was described as shy and timid by those who knew him.
Oh, wow.
Yet the same guy became a highway killer.
Huh.
Let's try to figure out what could lead to such a drastic shift.
It's certainly a fascinating psychological puzzle. A lot of serial killer narratives lean into that monster hiding in plain sight trope.
Yeah, for sure.
So, starting with Stevens's early life in Oakland might give us some clues,
Right.
even if they don't excuse his actions.
Okay, so his childhood wasn't exactly a walk in the park.
Wow.
His mother struggled with alcohol abuse,
Oh.
was arrested multiple times for drunk driving and even child abuse.
Oh, jeez.
And her struggles sadly ended with her death.
That's right, and he even attempted suicide at just 12 years old. That detail really jumps out at me.
Yeah.
We know that childhood trauma and adverse experiences can have a profound impact on brain development and behavior. Now, again, it's not about justifying his actions, but understanding the potential roots of his inner turmoil.
Right.
It's possible this is an early sign of a deeper psychological struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you wonder what kind of support system, if any, he had during those formative years. I mean,
Yeah.
here's a kid dealing with immense personal tragedy, and then he ends up going to Oakland Technical High School, described as shy and timid.
Okay.
But get this, many found him attractive, including his girlfriend, Mia Chapman.
Interesting.
How about that?
It's interesting how those conflicting perceptions emerge even in his youth. That duality appearing harmless while potentially harboring something darker is a recurring theme in many serial killer cases. It speaks to the difficulty of profiling and predicting this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
The article mentions a 7-month relationship with Mia Chapman that ultimately ended.
Oh, wow.
I'd be curious to know more about the nature of that relationship and its potential impact on Stevens' emotional state.
Right. It definitely makes you want to read between the lines, right?
Yeah.
Was there something about that relationship that could have been a catalyst?
Yeah.
We also can't forget about Richard James Clark, a younger friend who ended up becoming Stevens' accomplice.
Right, the partnership adds another layer of complexity. The question of influence and shared motivation immediately comes to mind. Did Stevens seek out a follower, someone he could manipulate? Or did their shared experiences create a sort of morbid bond? It's a classic dynamic in criminology, understanding the roles and motivations within a criminal partnership.
And this is where things take a very dark turn.
Uh-oh.
On April 3rd, 1989, Stevens and Clark target 29-year-old Leslie Neuer, who was parked in her vehicle. Now, this detail is crucial.
Okay.
Stevens opens the passenger door, leaving behind a palm print.
Wow.
Clark then shoots Neuer in the head.
It's that seemingly minor act, the palm print, that speaks volumes about the investigation that followed. Forensic science often hinges on these seemingly insignificant details.
Right.
In this case, that print, along with the shell casings left behind, became crucial pieces of evidence, ultimately linking Stevens to the crime scene.
Wow.
It highlights the importance of meticulous crime scene analysis and how something as simple as a fingerprint can unravel an entire case.
It's a stark reminder that even in the heat of the moment, criminals often leave behind traces, those tiny missteps that can lead to their capture. Talk about attention to detail.
Yeah.
But this was just the beginning.
Oh, no.
3 months later, Stevens attempts to ambush Karen Anderson. He fires 6 shots, but miraculously misses.
And you've got to think about the psychological impact on Anderson.
Right.
While physically unharmed, she escaped what could have been a fatal encounter.
Yeah.
That level of trauma, of suddenly being thrust into a life-or-death situation, would undoubtedly leave lasting scars.
Absolutely. A near-death experience like that would change anyone. Yeah.
It's a chilling reminder of the ripple effects of violence.
Right.
How it extends far beyond the immediate victims. Sadly, though, the violence didn't stop there.
Oh, gosh.
On June 8th, 1989, 16-year-old Laquan Sloan is tragically killed while driving on Interstate 580. The randomness of the act, the sheer disregard for human life, is deeply disturbing.
This killing, seemingly without motive or premeditation, really amplified the sense of fear that had begun to grip the community. The highway, which is typically seen as a symbol of freedom and mobility, suddenly transformed into a place of terror and uncertainty. You can imagine the panic that would set in knowing that anyone at any time could become a target.
Right. It's the foundation of their sense of safety was shattered.
Yeah.
And then just a few weeks later, Stephen strikes again,
Oh my gosh.
this time killing Betty Jean Rochon. He shoots her multiple times on the side of the highway.
Oh, wow.
It seems like the level of violence is escalating.
Yeah.
And it's that escalation that often becomes a hallmark of serial killers. There's a pattern of increasing brutality, a desensitization to violence that's deeply unsettling. In Stephen's case, the multiple shots fired, the seemingly unnecessary level of force, suggest a growing detachment from the consequences of his actions.
Yeah. It paints a very grim picture of his psychological state. And
Right.
you have to remember, this is all happening against the backdrop of a community living in fear.
Right.
People are hesitant to drive on the highway, the police presence is intensifying, and the tension is palpable.
Imagine the psychological toll on the community, constantly looking over their shoulder, wondering if they'll be the next target.
Yeah.
It's a chilling reminder of how quickly our sense of security can be shattered,
Right.
especially when the perpetrator seems to be acting randomly.
Yeah.
This brings us to yet another attack, this time on Paul Fenn and Julia Peters in their van. Thankfully, Peters is only injured by shattered glass.
Another close call. It makes you wonder if Stevens was deriving some sort of thrill from these near misses, from the power he held over his victims. But the question that keeps coming back is what was driving him? Was it a need for control, a desire to inflict pain, or something else entirely?
That's the million-dollar question when it comes to understanding the motivations of serial killers. Was there something specific about these victims that drew Stevens to them?
Right.
Or was it truly random, a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? It's a question that investigators and psychologists grapple with, trying to piece together the fragmented psyche of someone capable of such horrific acts.
And as the body count rises, Stevens seems to be operating with even more confidence, almost as if he's relishing the fear he's instilled. But little does he know, his reign of terror is about to come to an end.
That's right. A twist of fate and the incredible bravery of a witness are about to change the course of this story dramatically.
Wow.
Yeah.
So last we left off,
Right.
Interstate 580 had practically become a hunting ground.
Oh, wow.
And an entire community was on edge, fearing they could be the next target.
Right.
But like you said, a twist of fate was about to change everything.
Yes. And it involved an ordinary person who found himself in an extraordinary situation. On July 27, 1989, Stevens targeted 24-year-old Rodney Stokes,
Okay.
firing in his vehicle but missing. What's remarkable here is what Stokes did next.
He became the hero of the story, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Most people would be terrified.
Right.
But Stokes decided to follow Stevens with his headlights off.
Wow, talk about a high-stakes decision.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about his character, his sense of justice, and perhaps even a touch of righteous anger.
Right.
It's one thing to be a witness, but Stokes went above and beyond, putting himself at risk to gather information that would ultimately lead to Stevens' capture.
It's incredible to think about how that one split-second decision to follow or to flee had such a profound impact on the case.
Right.
So Stokes is tailing Stevens, and what happens next?
Stokes witnessed Stevens pull up alongside another car and shoot the driver, later identified as 28-year-old Raymond August.
Jeez.
Can you imagine the weight of that moment, seeing a murder unfold before your eyes?
Oh, gosh.
But instead of panicking, Stokes keeps his cool and continues to follow Stevens for a short distance before stopping at a payphone to call the police.
That's some quick thinking under pressure. He remembered crucial details like the vehicle description, which proved invaluable to the investigation.
Absolutely. Stokes' detailed account, along with his unwavering commitment to justice, was absolutely instrumental in bringing Stevens' reign of terror to an end.
Yeah.
It really underscores the critical role that witnesses play in criminal investigations.
Right.
They provide that firsthand perspective and that vital piece of the puzzle that can often make or break a case.
Wow.
And thanks to Stokes' information, later that day, police spotted a vehicle matching the description and initiated a traffic stop.
Okay.
And who was behind the wheel?
Yeah.
None other than Charles Stevens.
It's almost surreal, isn't it? This string of violent crimes, this reign of terror on the highway, and it all comes down to a routine traffic stop.
It might seem anticlimactic, but it actually highlights the importance of vigilance
Right.
and the element of chance in law enforcement. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs happen in the most unexpected ways.
That's for sure. So the police pull Stevens over,
Yeah.
and they confiscate his gun, which was a .357 Magnum Desert Eagle.
The Desert Eagle is a powerful weapon, known for its intimidating size and its ability to inflict significant damage. It's a detail that speaks to the level of premeditation
Right.
and the intent behind Stevens' actions.
It sends chills down my spine just thinking about it. The story doesn't end there, though. Ballistics testing linked the gun to all the murders and attempted murders, solidifying the case against Stevens.
It's a testament to the advancements in forensic science. Ballistics analysis, the science of matching bullets and firearms, played a crucial role in proving Stevens' guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
It removed any shred of doubt and painted a clear picture of his actions.
The evidence was overwhelming.
Right.
But then, in a surprising twist, Stevens decided to betray his accomplice, Richard Clark, leading to Clark's arrest. I mean, what was going on in his mind?
It's a question that psychologists could probably debate for hours.
Right.
Was it an act of self-preservation, a desperate attempt to shift blame, or was there a deeper, more manipulative motive at play?
Right.
It's difficult to say for certain, but it certainly complicates our understanding of their partnership.
Right. Was their bond genuine, built on a shared darkness,
Yeah.
or was Clark merely a pawn in Stevens' deadly game? We may never know the full story.
Right, and that ambiguity is what makes this case so fascinating. It forces us to grapple with the complexities of human relationships, especially within the context of criminal activity.
And during the trial, Clark testified against Stevens, claiming he was coerced into participating in the murders under threat. That adds another layer to the story, doesn't it?
Right.
Suddenly, the narrative shifts from a clear-cut case of two willing accomplices to a potentially more nuanced situation involving coercion and manipulation.
Exactly. And it raises important questions about the legal definition of coercion.
Yeah.
Was Clark truly acting under duress, or was he simply trying to mitigate his own culpability?
Right.
The jury ultimately had to decide whether to believe Clark's claims, and it's a decision that likely wasn't taken lightly.
Yeah, tough decision.
After a brief deliberation in January 1993, the jury reached a verdict, guilty on all counts.
Wow.
Stevens was sentenced to death and transferred to San Quentin State Prison.
Wow. It's a stark reminder of the gravity of his crimes and the finality of the justice system. But what about Clark? Did he face the same fate?
No, Clark's story took a different path.
Okay.
He pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter
Okay.
and received a significantly lighter sentence of 13 years.
That's a huge difference in sentencing. Why such a discrepancy?
It likely came down to a combination of factors, including Clark's perceived level of involvement, his willingness to cooperate with the prosecution, and the strength of the evidence against him. The legal system often struggles to determine appropriate punishments when dealing with accomplices, especially when there are claims of coercion or manipulation.
It makes you wonder if true justice was served. Both men were involved in these horrific acts, yet their fates diverged dramatically.
It's a complex issue, and one that legal scholars continue to debate.
Right.
The question of culpability, of determining individual responsibility in a joint criminal enterprise, is rarely straightforward.
Yeah, no kidding.
But for Clark, his journey ended in 2006 when he was released from prison.
So one man walks free while the other remains on death row.
Right.
It's a stark contrast that highlights the different paths their lives took after that fateful summer of 1989. But Stevens' story didn't end with his conviction. He still had legal options, right?
That's right. This is where the conversation shifts to the often convoluted world of appeals and legal challenges.
So we've got Stevens behind bars, Clark released, but the legal saga continues.
Right.
What happened with Stevens' appeals?
Well, in 2004, Stevens tried to appeal his sentence,
Okay.
arguing that his original defense team hadn't adequately challenged the evidence presented at his trial.
Interesting. So he was claiming that his legal representation was inadequate.
Yeah.
What was the basis for that claim?
He claimed that they hadn't done enough to investigate potential mitigating factors like his troubled childhood, or to explore alternative theories of the crime. But the appeal was ultimately denied.
I imagine the courts have a pretty high bar for what constitutes inadequate legal representation. It's
Right.
not just a matter of disagreeing with the outcome.
You're absolutely right. To overturn a conviction based on ineffective assistance of counsel, you have to demonstrate that your lawyer's performance was demonstrably deficient,
Right.
and that this deficiency prejudiced the outcome of your trial. In other words, you have to show that your lawyer made serious errors that likely affected the verdict.
It sounds like a tough standard to meet.
Yeah.
But even with the appeal denied, Stevens' case was still subject to another layer of complexity, and that's California's ongoing debate over capital punishment.
That's right. California has a long and complicated history with the death penalty. There have been numerous legal challenges, ballot initiatives, and even a moratorium on executions imposed by the governor.
It's a topic that raises a lot of ethical and legal questions. Where do things stand now?
As of February 2022, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit upheld the denial of Stevens' petition for a writ of habeas corpus.
Okay. For those of us who aren't legal experts, what exactly is a writ of habeas corpus?
It's a legal mechanism that allows someone to challenge their imprisonment,
Okay.
arguing that they're being held unlawfully. In Stevens' case, he was essentially arguing that his continued detention on death row, given the state's moratorium on executions, was unconstitutional,
So it's not about guilt or innocence at this point.
but rather the legality of his confinement.
Exactly. And to make matters more complex, Stevens' petition for a rehearing was also denied in April 2022.
It seems like he was running out of options. What was his last resort?
In September 2022, Stevens filed a petition for a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Wow. The Supreme Court, that's the highest court in the land.
Right.
What were his chances of success at that level?
It's always difficult to predict the outcome of Supreme Court cases, but it's worth noting that the court only agrees to hear a small percentage of the cases that are appealed to them.
Oh, wow.
They tend to focus on cases that involve significant legal issues or conflicting interpretations of the law.
So it's a long shot, but still a chance for Stevens to have his case reviewed by the highest court in the country.
Absolutely. And regardless of the outcome, Stevens' case serves as a stark reminder of the enduring power of the legal system, even decades after the crimes were committed.
It's a case that raises so many questions.
Questions about the nature of evil, the impact of trauma, the role of accomplices, and the ongoing debate over capital punishment. It's a story that goes far beyond the facts of the case itself, prompting us to grapple with some of the most fundamental questions about justice and morality.
You're right. It challenges us to consider the limits of our understanding of human behavior and the complexities of a justice system that strives for fairness,
Right.
but must also grapple with the realities of human fallibility and the ever-evolving understanding of law and ethics.
It's a lot to take in. We've covered a lot of ground today, from Stevens' troubled childhood to the chilling details of his crimes, the incredible bravery of Rodney Stokes, the legal complexities of his trial and appeals, and the ethical dilemmas surrounding the death penalty.
It's a story that stays with you, forcing you to confront uncomfortable truths about the potential for darkness
Right.
within seemingly ordinary individuals and the lasting impact of violence on individuals and communities.
What strikes me is how this case really highlights the ripple effects of one person's actions.
Right.
We have the victims and their families forever scarred by the loss and trauma,
Right.
the community gripped by fear, the law enforcement officers tasked with bringing Stevens to justice, and the legal system grappling with the complexities of punishment and redemption. It's a stark reminder that even decades later, the echoes of these crimes continue to reverberate.
Exactly, and it leaves us with a final thought-provoking question. If Rodney Stokes hadn't bravely stepped forward, if chance hadn't intervened, how many more lives might have been lost on that stretch of highway?
It's a chilling thought, but it also underscores the power of individual action, the importance of speaking up, and the potential for everyday heroes to emerge from the most unexpected circumstances. So as you reflect on this case, remember those who were lost, honor the courage of those who stood up for justice, and engage in the ongoing conversations about crime, punishment, and the complexities of the human condition. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.